In the beginning, it was really challenging. It's still challenging, but it was much more challenging in the beginning because in the beginning was really building the vision. There's so much that you don't think about that goes into making something like this happen. It's kind of like you create your wish list of like, here's the vision, magic wand. If we could have everything, here's how it would be. And then you break that down by, well, how do we make these things happen?
You are listening to the Go Earn Your Salt podcast, brought to you by Salty Electrolytes. On this podcast, your host, Riley Rogers, explores the stories of people who get after it, get things done, and earn their salt. You will hear from high achievers who discuss what makes them tick, how they got to where they are today, and where they're headed tomorrow. Perhaps this podcast will help you go earn your salt. Today we have Kameron Moore and Jesse Brock, owners of the Northwest Submission Challenge submission grappling event. And I brought these guys on here today because one, Salty Electrolytes, my electrolyte company, is a sponsor of the event. We were fans first and then became a sponsor later. But two, these two guys are just business-minded genius dudes, and so they fit right into this. They're athletes, they're competitors, they're getting after kind of guys. And so, gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So listen, I'd like each of you to take just a minute and tell me, Cameron, we're going to start with you, who you are, what life looked like as a kid, how you grew up, kind of what made you the man you are today.
I grew up in Meridian, Idaho. That's where I spent pretty much all of my youth that I remember, at least. Pretty much in the same house most of the time. Went to school. I was very unremarkable as a general human being. One thing that got my attention as a kid was like, all my brothers did martial arts, and if you grew up in the 80s and 90s, like all you watched was martial arts movies. And then we stumbled across these VHS tapes that were called UFC. And it was back like in the, it was the Wild West days of that stuff. And we used to go down and rent the VHSs, and that was like kind of what led me here. But other than that, generally, pretty unremarkable youth, to be honest. Graduated in 2002 from Eagle. And then a few years after that, found my way into doing some martial arts and started my combat sports path from there, and then became an adult and balanced that with life. And one thing led to another, which led to another, which led to another. Here we are.
Awesome, man. Jesse, how about you?
Grew up in Alaska, born and raised, and then found wrestling pretty early on. I think third grade. It was the first sport I felt like I was good at, and I was also a smaller guy, so wrestling it was nice to actually compete against people my own size. Playing basketball and soccer and just the other sports. It was tough being a little smaller. And then I ended up being pretty good at it. I won a few state titles in Alaska and competed nationally just in freestyle as a high schooler, and got the attention of Boise State. And I was recruited to wrestle there. And 99 is when I graduated, so moved down here, and I've been here ever since. Funny, Cameron mentioned the UFC VHS days, but I remember watching that. I remember not being really grabbed by it as a kid, but I kind of got reintroduced to it when I came to Boise State. A lot of people that know the sport, that know the history of it, know Jens Pulver.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't know he was a Boise State wrestler. His time at Boise State had ended about the time mine was beginning, so he still had some friends on the team, and he was still around. And I remember he was watching, because one of the guys that I became good friends with was good friends with Jim. So we would hang out at the same house. And these guys were a lot older than me, so I would just kind of watch them, and that obviously was kind of in awe of them. And I remember him watching videos uh, with the guys at the house, and a lot of them were like Pride VHS tapes, which I'd never seen Pride at all, and it just seemed like this whole new world. And uh, I remember kind of my interest peaking a little bit more, but at the time my focus was really on wrestling, and but it just kind of, I guess, planted a seed. And then I finished up my wrestling career at Boise State. I did all right. I won the Pac-10 conference twice. I went to the NCAA's 3 times. Never made All-American, unfortunately. It was, you know, uh, a major disappointment as an athlete. Part of the reason I think when the opportunity to compete in MMA or just train popped up, it kind of I felt like I still had things I wanted to accomplish as an athlete, and just kind of um, started training. And I don't know if people on the podcast might remember the old Gold's Gym on Park Center. That's where I started training. They had a boxing ring, they had a mat up on the mezzanine there, and started training. And one thing led to another, and yeah, I own a gym now and help Cameron run the Northwest. So there's obviously a lot in between there, but that's the cliff notes of it.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that a little bit more. Cameron, as you came up, you said you started getting interested in the UFC. You started training jiu-jitsu. Talk about kind of what that looked like. And then, as you got into it, you got to up into the deep into the color belts, and then you get injured. And I want you to kind of discuss what happened there, what that journey looked like.
It's not like a intelligent story by any means. I always tell people, like, I'm not an inspiration, I'm a cautionary tale. But in the beginning, like, I was just as a teenager again, I was so captivated by UFC. And at the time, it wasn't what it is now. It wasn't mixed martial arts. It was a contest to see what martial arts would prevail. And my brothers did Kenpo, and like any other martial artist, you swear that the thing you do is like the greatest thing in the world. And we would watch those. And I didn't really know anything about any of them other than what you heard in movies. And so we'd watch and then see what happened. And then we saw this like skinny dude in a gi named Royce something or other.
Oh, Royce.
And he, Horse Gracie, obviously. And he, like was choking dudes. But at the time, like, I watched it and I was like, okay, that's effective and that's cool. You'd see other stand-up people be that's effective and that's cool. And over time, when you started to get like the teens, the UFC teens, the UFC 20s, you started people mixing things together. Like this guy boxes and wrestles. This guy does kickboxing and jiu-jitsu. And there started to be this understanding that you need more than one thing to be the effective combat athlete. And as a teenager, I was not athletic, like in any way. My athleticism was like jumping on the trampoline and riding my bike. That was it. But my senior year, I got the itch to wrestle because I knew a guy who had done like a little bit of jujitsu. We're talking like white belt, one stripe somewhere else. But like we would kind of mess around and grapple a little bit. And I'm like, this is cool. I want to know more about this. But I didn't really know that jujitsu is what it was. And so the easiest thing was to just try wrestling. And like starting wrestling as a senior in high school is a terrible idea, but I learned a lot and I did some cool stuff. And like within that year, I was the worst wrestler in the room, but I was the best wrestler of my friends and brothers. So that was fun. Fast forward a few years, graduate high school, screw around, make bad decisions. I think this was like 2005. I would have been early 20s. I was home from work because I worked construction at the time. And in the winters, you don't work that much. And I was home and I was just like, you know what? I wonder if there even is like an MMA school. There's probably not one in Idaho, but I'm just curious. And so I just Googled it. There was one result. One result popped up, and it was Primal Tribe, which was owned, I think it still is, by Tom Supnet, who most of us know. And I emailed him and was like, hey, what does it take to get started? And he was like, just come down and start training. And I was like, cool. When I was there, I knew at the time if I wanted to do MMA, I was going to have to do some stand up because they were exclusively jujitsu. Like they represented MMA fighters, but they outsourced the striking. And so I met a boxer there named Scott Lincoln. And if you remember the Wild West days, he competed MMA and boxed. He became my boxing coach. So then I was doing boxing and jujitsu for a couple of years, and it was not cost effective. And it wasn't like the best way to train because you're getting these two things super separate and in different places. And I happened to be having lunch at a restaurant in Boise, and at the table next to me was Ray Perales. And I knew of Ray because I had seen him fight at the previous iteration of Front Street Fights. I think it was XFS. I'd seen him fight. And to me, like I was a nerd. So I was just like, you look good, Ray Perales. And I was like, hey, dude, I've seen you fight. And he's like, do you train? And I'm like, yeah, this is what I do. And he's like, oh, well, there's this new gym in Garden City that does all of that in house with like the goal to be towards MMA. They also do wrestling, they also do kickboxing, and there's legit fighters there. And it was what SBG is now, it was combat fitness at the time. And so I was like, well, shit, all of a sudden, under one roof, doing all this stuff like with an economical price and actually cross training and blending things together. I stopped boxing, I stopped doing jiu-jitsu, and I just made my way over to Jesse's gym and kind of just started training from there. And over the next few years, I really phased out of training the striking as much because I started college and like brain damage and college are not, they don't exist in the same space super well.
They don't go together.
And I just loved grappling. Like at the time, it was still kind of the days of MMA where you could either be a really good grappler that knew enough stand up to defend their way into what they want to do, or you could be a really good striker who can like defend takedowns. And I was like, well, I just want to do enough striking to like get it to the ground in jiu-jitsu. And then at that time I was like, oh, why don't I just do jiu-jitsu? So I pretty much just switched to that. The next part is the confusing part. It's like, okay, if you started in 2007 doing jiu-jitsu, why did you get your purple belt in 2018?
For listeners who
And
don't know, typically a purple belt is somewhere around 5 or 6 years in, typically, but there's exceptions, and Cameron's about to tell us of his.
there is. I mean, the first couple of years was definitely just not being as committed as I should, kind of being in and out. And a lot of that was just being young and poor and stupid and whatever. I got really serious in like 2011. And again, like, why the gap? Well, I was a 4-year blue belt and I was a 4-year white belt. So it took me a long time to get to those belts. Again, there was probably still some like commitment issues with like school and life and some other things, but um, I took a break at one point, got really into lifting, came back. Like, I don't know. I think I just wasn't like, didn't take it super seriously until like halfway through my blue belt. And then I was like, all right, like stop screwing around. Let's actually try to like advance here. And so got my blue belt in 2014, got my purple belt in 2018. Um, I like to think it's because Jesse and the coaches were like holding me back and making me a sandbagger because they really wanted to make me earn it. The reality is I'm just kind of stupid and all I wanted to do was roll and not really like get better.
All right.
Um,
Time out for a second. Jesse,
sure.
you were coaching him during this time. What's your side of that story? He's making some claims there.
Sure. Well, it's funny because Cameron kind of recounts the timeline. I think a lot of it had to do with us starting as an MMA school, um, primarily no gi, not any real structure to our training, which, now that I own a gym and we have a gi program and there's a lot of structure to how we teach and how we progress students, like I can understand why we stayed as lower belts for so long, because it's just like, the jujitsu there's a structure to it, and if you're going to be giving somebody a belt and allowing them to represent your lineage, then you want to know them. You want to know not only how they are as a practitioner, but what kind of person they are. And um, so when we didn't really have that, we had jiu-jitsu classes, but we at the time didn't care or understand the importance of having a lineage, having a coach that could award us belts. And uh that changed at some point when we ended up linking up with Alliance and Mitch Coates, who was kind of one of the pioneers in our area at the time. Um and he actually started running gi classes, taught some no gi for us as well. And I learned a lot from Mitch, and gave us some structure and some stability, and helped us understand how to run a jiu-jitsu program. um and at the time too, we were trying to figure out how to run a business. And because I remember myself, Scott Jorgensen, who's the other owner, who's fought in the UFC veteran. He's the one that kind of got me into the sport, because I were teammates at Boise State. Um, but we were just training because we wanted to compete. So we opened the gym as just to have a training facility, but then you realize that you're tired of dumping your own money into it. So we had to find a way to actually make it a viable business. So eventually when Mitch came on board, it helped a lot. Just create an opportunity for athletes that only wanted to compete in jiu-jitsu, only wanted to learn jiu-jitsu, and it's a revenue stream. But you still have to have a service, and be able to offer them the opportunity to advance in the art. And um, eventually when we departed from Alliance, we were kind of rogue for a year or two, and then it's in 2014 that we found SBG. And that was a huge blessing for us. We knew sort of how to run a business, but not in the most effective and lasting way. And so we found them, really started to understand how to build culture in our gym, how to you know have best business practices inside of a martial arts school. And that's when things got a lot more serious, and we were able to actually guide students through their white, blue, purple belt years in a way that made sense and allowed them to advance. So I think that kind of coincided with when Cameron started getting a little more serious about it too. At the time, he was a big part of our gym. He's one of the kind of the founding members that followed us from Garden City into downtown Boise, where we are now. And uh, so, yeah, I think, at least in my mind, that's kind of when things changed for us, and as a result, changed for a lot of our students.
That and you just said about 10 things there that I could take 3 hours here, 4 hours on this podcast, talk to you about that kind of stuff. But it sounds like to me, Cameron, it wasn't all you that made the 4-year white belt and the 4-year blue belt, right? It was partly learning the business side of owning a school. Jesse, you said something there that you trained so you could compete, but then kind of came to the realization that crap, we better start treating this like a business, or we're not going to have a place to train or compete, so then we can compete. What were some of the things, kind of the events that happened there that changed your line of thinking?
Um, I think, well, obviously, having to come out of my own pocket to cover rent, that wasn't cool. So I didn't like that. And I was a single guy. I worked a job with an engineering company. That was my undergrad at Boise State, was civil engineering. And um, so yeah, I was doing that as a career, but my heart was really in the gym. I still had athletic goals, as I mentioned before, and yeah, I just wasn't that interested in really settling in long term as an engineer. The company I worked for was awesome. They tolerated me taking off for weekends, showing up with bumps and bruises. At one point, I showed up to work with my nose on the other side of my face, and um, uh, But yeah, I remember at the time thinking it still felt like a summer job that I'd been doing for about 4 years, and, um, I was kinda had in the back of my head, it would be really cool if I could make the gym my full-time job. Um, it was probably, like, late 2010, when I got laid off. A lot of it had to do with just, the company's projections. We were a smaller
Sure.
company, but the work that we had coming up, and, obviously, you got this guy that you're paying money to eventually be a professional engineer, and you could tell his heart's not into it. I don't begrudge them at all for letting me go. I think it was the best decision that they could have made for their business, and honestly, it was kind of a blessing for me personally. And so yeah, I just kind of dumped all my energy into the gym at that point. So a portion of that was, what else am I going to do at the time? And so yeah, and I still cared about having a, a quality gym, and so it just became and start asking questions. How can we actually make this a profitable business? How can I start paying myself? How can I start paying the guys that are teaching classes for me? How can we grow this thing? And so, you kind of learn little by little. And then, like I said, joining SBG was really the tipping point for us, because we had access to a network of people that started out like we did, but eventually made a lot of the same realizations and figured out a way. And so we didn't have to go through all the same things they did. We just listened to what they had to tell us, and made the changes. And and that wasn't without some resistance, because I was in my 20s, or I guess I was probably early 30s at that point. But you still think, and but eventually, things change. Just watching the experience that students had inside our gym, watching the classes grow, watching just the culture develop, and attract more people, and it just became something that gained momentum, and just kind of went with it.
Yeah. Well, I want to go back to you, Cameron, because you talk about getting your purple belt in 2018. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, for the audience, I promise we're going to get past the jujitsu part of this, but I want to build a background for what's coming next. And so, but what I want to talk to you about is, because this happens to a lot of people, right? Is you've got this love for jujitsu, and then you have a pretty serious injury that took you out of the sport. At least until today, you're still out, right? There's hopefully some signs of some good stuff to come, but you've been out for a while. And what was that like? Talk about the injury, and then what that's been like to you, to just kind of reconcile the fact that, man, I can't train, can't do the thing I
Sure.
love.
So for me, it wasn't like one thing that happened. It was a series of things over time, and it's my lower back that's been the issue. Uh, Early on, it was like some lower back pain. Became like every now and then, like a couple times a year, I'd injure it in a way where like I couldn't really walk, and like a few days later, I was okay. And it was a series of things, and the series of things came from training dumb. I trained super, super hard, like every time that and I went like 6 days a week. And I did not rest, and I did not recover, and I did not take injuries seriously at all. I just kept smashing my face into other people's face until I couldn't like breathe anymore. And, at the time in your mind, you're like, wow, I'm training hard. And then now I'm like, damn, and so I just didn't take care of myself, and got to the point to where I couldn't train at all. And I remember being in a comp class a couple of years ago in the morning, and we were doing mount drills, and I was on mount bottom. And I had already had a ton of back issues up to this point, to where I was like training less and training different, training lighter. I was really trying to work around the injury. And I remember this day we were training mount bottom drills, and I was on bottom, and my brain was telling my hips to bridge, but they weren't moving, and they were just like glued. And I was like, this sucks. And at that point, it was like every other day of training, I would be injured and couldn't train for a few days. And I was like, this is getting really super bad. Like, I can't train. Uh, Injury wise, got an MRI. Turns out every disc in my lumbar is protruding in a different direction. And like two of them are actually into the spinal cord. So find out what happens. I mean, I've done like 3 rounds of rehab. Gonna go see a specialist sometime soon. But the hardest part is definitely the like losing the thing you love. And that was the hardest part. I definitely went through all of the stages of grief over probably a year or two. I mean, I denied it at first for a long time. I tried to barter where I'm like, okay, well, my lower back hurts, then I won't do this type of training. I'll do this. I tried to like, like I just went through all the stages. I was angry at the point. I was sad for a very long time. Like it's been one of the pillars of my life for my entire adulthood, and to have it taken away, not because of anything voluntary. I mean, it was a real legit grieving process for a long time. And I've had to work through that, which has been honestly more difficult and painful than like anything physical.
Well, I want you to take a little more time on that because one of the other questions I've had for you and was something I was really thinking about is, this happens to anybody in any venture, right? Where you just get derailed for a while and you have to really reconcile that, like, what the heck is going on? But a lot of people in that stressful time will quit. And you haven't quit, man. You stuck it out in that world, even though you're not really on the mats training. And what kind of motivation is behind you that allows you to do that? All right, you sweaty buggers. That liquid dripping off your forehead and down your back contains minerals that are critical for high performance. If you don't put those minerals back, you're not going to perform well. This is where salty electrolytes comes in. Salt contains 6 electrolyte minerals plus a touch of iodine to help you replenish after a hard workout. Salt is the only electrolyte supplement to pair every mineral with its counterpart, giving you the most robust mineral profile on the market, period. Head over to goearnyoursalt.com today to get some for yourself. Use the code GOEARNYOURSALT to get 15% off your first order. And now, my friends, go earn your salt.
I don't know that it's so much motivation as it is just like pure addiction. I mean, I recognize that I had a really unhealthy relationship with like jujitsu and combat sports for a long time. And um, it's true. It's true to say, like it's literally, it gets to the point where it's like this, it takes over my life and consumes my thoughts and my free time and everything else. And there's some good that comes with that for sure. I mean, I go pretty hardcore into things that I love, and it's given me a lot of opportunities to network and branch out and do things that other people don't maybe take the time or opportunity to do. And I've been pretty blessed with that. And so, if I can't train or participate in the thing that I love, well, skills and assets and a lot of time in this that I can funnel into something else, which, might be Northwest, it might be working the Front Street, it might be doing whatever, um, anything I can to still be a part of something that I love. Because some people, everybody grieves in different ways, and some people just want to forget. They just want to forget that they ever loved this thing, and they want to forget. It's a painful memory to think about, so they distance themselves as much as they can, and I understand that. Um, this isn't something I wanted to forget. It's not something that I wanted to move on from, and so I had to spend a lot of time reconciling that my life with jujitsu is going to be very different. It's not what I wanted it to be, but I still want to have a relationship and I still want to have a life in combat sports. So, um, figuring out a way, and also just honestly getting blessed with opportunities to do it, has been the next best thing.
Yeah. Jesse, along these lines, at the Northwest Submission Challenge, you and I had a real brief discussion about your changing role as you age and as you've gone from being fiercely in the competitive world to now more of a coaching role, and that transition. Did you experience some of that same stuff, or are you kind of in the middle of that, experiencing some of that same kind of like, crap, man, I am changing here, and my path is starting to take a different direction. How's that been for you?
Um, It's actually been pretty positive. When I first started out, so I mentioned Scotty before, Scott Jorgensen. He was a year or two younger than me, but I mean, we were kind of peers in terms of our age. He's a guy that pushed me a lot just physically. And Scott was always a really good athlete. And he knew before he even finished wrestling that he wanted to compete in MMA. And like I said, I was just over at his house one day. He and my brother were roommates, and I was just there hanging out. And they were going to go to Gold's Gym and train. So I just tagged along. Scotty was actually training to fight. My brother and I were just there screwing around, but had a lot of fun. I remember at the time, because I wrestled senior level freestyle after I was done with my collegiate eligibility. That's a tough way to go because now you've got the best college athletes trying to make uh, spots on Olympic and world teams, and I wasn't even a top college athlete. I didn't make the podium at the NCAA's, and that's not to say I couldn't have gotten to that point. There's a lot of examples of guys that weren't Division I All Americans that still, won world and Olympic medals. But I mean, it was just tough, and I think I was looking for a change, so um, started training, and then. But like I said, Scotty was kind of my measuring stick, and he moved up the ranks quickly to where he was fighting in the WC and the UFC. And, I was still kind of doing the regional thing. And, I remember thinking, I don't know if I'm going to get there, but I do really enjoy this. And um, I remember thinking, I think I could be a good coach, though. I might not be the best athlete, but I think I can be a good coach. I think my mark can be made as a coach rather than an athlete. And so my mind kind of went there at least. And I coached as a high schooler, coaching young kids, and I had a lot of good coaching uh, role models. And there were always people that I really admired. I really looked up to people that could help young kids do things that they didn't think they could do. And so, like I said, I think about halfway through my time as a competitor, my mind, at least, I had that seed, uh, that thought in the back of my head. So then, the business started to grow. Again, I was still competing, but I'd kind of moved into a coaching role at that time. We had other coaches, but I was coaching a lot, and the business was growing, and that I was trying to progress in my abilities to lead a room, run a room, be able to develop students and hobbyists of all ages and abilities. And, um, you know, I, again, in 2014, that's when we joined SBG. I really had the opportunity to observe up close people like me that had stopped competing and had shifted full time into the role of coach and business owner. And I think not having that, the transition out of being an athlete, which I'd been for so long, would have been a lot more difficult. But if I'm honest, it's one of the most rewarding things that I could have. I still get to be on the mats. I still get to train. I still get to do the things that I enjoy. But it's with the goal of being the best coach I can, not necessarily being the best athlete. And I think when you train with that mindset, the way you train changes a little bit. I have to learn how to get the most out of people that are bigger than me, smaller than me, younger, older, helping them understand the way to do jujitsu, the way to strike. You know, and a lot of them aren't going to compete, but they enjoy this thing, and I want to help them experience it, um, with the goal of longevity, eh, because I think as you transition from being an athlete to a coach or maybe just a hobbyist in whatever sport it is, like you really have to enjoy that thing. Otherwise, now that you're no longer an athlete, what are you? And like I said, I've had a lot of good coaching role models. And I think the biggest thing try to help people understand now is like when you come in the gym, like we're teaching you to be a martial artist first. You're not a fighter, or your window to be a fighter or to be a competitive jiu-jitsu athlete is short, right? So when that window closes, are you going to keep doing this thing or are you going to quit? And my hope is that they keep doing it because they develop relationships with the people here. They like the way doing jujitsu makes them feel. They develop physical, mental, emotional strength. Like there's so many reasons to keep doing this. And I think the more you're around it, the more you understand that competition is very, very low on that totem pole.
It becomes more of a minor
So
thing in the big picture, right?
absolutely.
Yeah. Listen, as a business owner, Jesse, this is another question for you is over the years in any business, we end up with very difficult, sometimes impossible customers. Okay. What's your thoughts on that? How do you deal with that? You just get that person who just doesn't fit the culture that you've talked about a few times now. How do you as a business owner deal with that?
Um, well, one of the things I learned early on from the business owners in SPG is like, um, we meet people before they even step foot on our mats. Like, I want to know that they're a good fit. They're going to want to know that it's a good fit. That if I don't want somebody training here that doesn't want to be here, that isn't, that wishes they could be somewhere else. So, before we give them prices, before we give them schedules, they come in and meet us. Because I think the role as a coach and especially the things they do here, it's so important. The way you interact with your training partners, like it's a very personal thing, and it's got to be the right fit. So we meet them. I show them the facility. I think we have a beautiful facility that we spend a lot of time um, building and developing, and I want to be able to show it off. So that selfishly, I want people to come in for that reason, but more importantly, like I want to know why they want to train. Um, I want to know, yeah, you find out pretty quickly about somebody if I want to know that they're here for the right reasons. They're here for reasons that last, and and we get young guys, and their mindset is very short term, but you can tell. And so that's part of how we deal with it. Is like before you step on the mats, you're gonna meet the coaches, and honestly, the people that don't want to do that, they they kind of self-select, right? Well, if you're not going to take 45 minutes of your day to come and visit the place that you're going to be spending hopefully the next 10 years at 12 years at, until you die, um because ultimately that, like, if we're doing our job, then we help them understand the importance of it. um then maybe you're not a good fit. And like I said, it kind of works out well for us because they tend to self-select people that don't want to come in. It's probably not the place for you anyways. um because and nothing against those people. There's places that they can just go and scrap. And um but again, I think you people that go in there just with that goal, they don't last long in the sport. And my hope now is somebody that was that person, but has now become somebody that understands the bigger picture. I can just help them understand that very early on.
It's also that speaks a lot to the culture you've worked on and developed, right? If they're self-selecting, that's a big deal. Have you ever had somebody come in there that's just slips through the cracks, and you find out later they're either just a creep or they're crazy or they're just not a good fit?
100%. Yeah. And, we've fired students before, tear up the contract, this isn't the place for you any longer. I think this is something I had to learn too is, that our number one goal is to create a place for everybody. And if one person's going to become a cancer, then they got to go. Um, I early on, I wanted everybody to come train because I just needed you know, every student so I could afford rent. And, we tolerated a lot of stuff that just wasn't good for us as a business, wasn't good for the students on the mat. So I think being willing to just fire a student is something that everybody's got to get comfortable with at some point if you're going to create something that's going to stick around long term.
That is beautifully said, man. That is beautifully said. Well, let's pivot here a little bit, and I want you guys to talk about the Northwest Submission Challenge, because when that event was started by my friend Tren Long, he's a part of Team Rhino where I train, but it was a very different thing then. And can you guys talk about that, and then eventually what led to you purchasing the event and then changing the format?
We can, but my computer's about to die and I left my laptop charger in my office because I'm stupid. We went over this a little bit. I need to switch to my phone. How bad is that going to screw you up?
I don't know. Never done that before. Let me just put a time marker here for 41 and some change.
I've never left my charger in my laptop until today.
Today.
That's today.
Cool. I'm so sorry.
Give it a shot, man. See what happens. Because you should just be able to follow the link and come right back in. But
I did. It says it's waiting for you to let me in.
Oh, that was what that was. I thought that was another thing. Like Jesse had tried to come in twice somehow too, and let's see how that works.
It wasn't me this time.
Okay, let me switch. I'm gonna leave your other one out. Remove that participant. There we go. Awesome. Talk to me a little bit. Actually, your camera's locked up.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I can hear you too. Can you see me?
Yeah, we can see you. You actually don't look too bad. You sound different, but still, like I can hear you just fine. So.
All right, I am so sorry.
It's okay.
So stupid.
Some people and their chargers, I don't know. Okay. So yeah, the question was about Northwest Submission and kind of what it was, and then what you guys, why you purchased it, and then what it became.
Yeah, best place to start is at the beginning, and Jesse knows kind of the beginning history better than anybody. So in its first iteration and how it came to be under Jesse's control, I'll let him take that.
Sure. So the Northwest was a tournament that Trent started locally, and it was only in Boise. There wasn't a lot of other events, at least not to my knowledge. The Northwest was actually the first jiu-jitsu tournament that I competed in as a white belt, and it was great. I did it, I don't know, 3-4 times whenever like my schedule allowed, because at the time I was competing, so that was my main priority. And I forget when exactly. Yeah, it might have been 2016, 2017, but it was after one event, and then we just got word that that Trent was just busy with kayaking, and obviously had a family and another job, and he wasn't going to run the tournament any longer. And for us, we had a lot of competitors, and our program was growing. We just felt like if we had the opportunity to keep the event going, if Trent will be willing to let us take the helm, then that's something we were committed to doing. And at the time, it was myself, Brad Bentley, who was coaching for us at the time, Scott Tomich, Mike Ransom. It was kind of the four of us that took on the responsibility of running it. Trent, gave us his blessing, sold us the name, sold us all the equipment that he had, and we ran it at Capitol High School, and that was an experience, running a big tournament like that over 2 days. And I want to say we did it for 3 years, and then COVID happened, and obviously we didn't run it then that year, and um, we talked about bringing it back in 2021, but I remember we were just so busy with other things, especially just trying to keep the gym afloat, and what gyms like ours, the changes that were happening in gyms like ours, and trying to continue to run a business. And so I think it was I mean, man, I'm running. Um, was it 2022, Cam, that we brought it
Yeah,
back?
that
And
was when
it's
we started.
okay.
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, 2020, 2021. Um, it didn't happen at all, and during that time, um, there have been a lot more tournaments coming to the area between the Boise Open with the IBJJF, Grappling Industries. There was a lot more standard tournaments in the area, and actually 2020 coincided with the expansion of our current gym, so there was just a lot going on, and I think at the time I just didn't quite have the bandwidth to do a tournament of that scale. And also I felt like it was that the need was being met in our martial arts community with other tournaments that were committed to coming here. So I remember uh, Jake Martinez and Paul Sharp, who are two of the black belts here, just met, and we discussed bringing the Northwest back, but in the format that you see today. And
Let's
I
describe that
think
a
the
little bit.
community is really,
Describe
yeah,
what the format was and what it became so that listeners understand what we're talking about here, because not everybody who listens to this is in the martial arts world and understands what we're talking about. And so I like to kind of inject the business philosophy into it too.
sure. Well, a standard tournament is, you got all your belt ranks, you got all your age divisions, your weight divisions, and people register and they just pair everybody up. So you don't know who you're going against. You're going to get multiple matches throughout the day. Generally, there's 4 to 10 mats, sometimes more, and coaches are running around all over the gym, and it's a big undertaking for sure. And there's a lot of value in tournaments like that, because you get a lot of matches under your belt, you gain a competition experience. Um, but like I said, at the time when we were looking to bring it back, there was a lot of tournaments like that in the area. And so, yeah, we wanted to do something a little bit different, which is create a super fight series, which um, now we're looking at matching all the athletes up beforehand. You kind of organize it like an MMA card, where you have X number of fights. The fans that are coming know who's going against who, and it's a really cool way to watch jiu-jitsu. Fight to Win, who was here just a few months ago, they're actually one of the first in the country that to do an event like that. They're kind of the original super fight series, so I thought it was really cool that they came here. We ended up having our 7th event just a short time later, but um, I felt like the current format has really been embraced by the fans. I've had a lot of people tell me like this is just such a cool way to watch jiu-jitsu. The athletes have a spotlight and a platform, so they're not just on mat 8 over there in the corner. Everybody's there watching them, and um, again, they get some of the you get like some MMA vibes. There's the walkout music, the people cheering for you. You got the announcers, so it's been a lot of fun. It's been really cool to see the way that the jiu-jitsu community has embraced it, and um, on a personal note, it's really been rewarding to me to watch Cameron really flourish in his role. He's kind of the face of the event, and I'm really happy that I can just be a part of it and support him. So
Let's talk about that, Cameron. I want to get to your side of this thing, because you became involved and you guys are partners, right? And what's your role, and what's that look like for you?
Well, I got involved kind of in the early phases of the first event. as Jesse mentioned, it really came together originally with him and Paul and Jake with an awesome vision. And I think at the time they even had the Egyptian booked and they had some of the graphics and some of that stuff done. And I was brought in because I had done some commentary. I had done some commentary for some events. I've done it for Front Street, done it for a few other events. And so I was like, hey, do you want to do commentary? And I was like, yeah, of course. Am I good at it? Like, not terribly, but yeah, hell yeah, I'm going to jump in. Let's go. And then I was like, well, who's doing the matchmaking? And they were like, oh, we're not sure yet. I was like, can I do it? And then from that point, I kind of just leveraged my history with Jesse. Jesse and I have a pretty unique partnership where when pretty much anything needs to be done, one can call the other and be like, hey man, you want to help me build this thing? Yeah, sure. And so I think I've earned that trust from Jesse over the years of us supporting and doing some projects together. And so with kind of his work ethic and vision and my sort of experience, really just being a jiu-jitsu nerd and combat sports nerd, he really gave me the opportunity to kind of inject what I thought would be cool, and he and I passed ideas back and forth and kind of built it into what it is. So officially my title is matchmaker, but unofficially Jesse and I kind of, he gives me too much credit. We split a lot of the work and go back and forth, and we're calling each other and texting each other and going back and forth at all different weeks and months and times of day to be like, hey, what about this? Hey, let's try this. Hey, let's do this. And we also solicit a lot of feedback from the athletes, the fans, the coaches. We want the good, we want the bad. We just want to make everything better than what it is, because, you know, we're just limited by failure of imagination. If we don't do it, it's just because we haven't thought of it yet. But I think we laid a pretty good groundwork with the first one, and then learned some lessons and kind of built and capitalized on that for subsequent events. And I'm really proud of what we've put together, what we've built, and what we have done. And we put a lot of work into it. And it's on the day of the event, I got to give credit to the people who make the thing function. I mean, we have a team of volunteers that helps out. That would, it would be so impossible without those guys. And again, just kind of the groundwork and vision from some of those guys early on. But yeah, Jesse and I do a lot, and we're happy to do it, and we're proud of what we've done.
And I, you know, just from a fan standpoint, I told you guys I was a fan before we were a sponsor, right? And that it is the coolest way to watch jiu-jitsu. It, you know, when you're in a tournament setting, man, there's just noise everywhere. And like you mentioned, Jesse, you got 8-10 matches going on at the same time. It's hard to keep up with what's going on. You really don't know what's going on in a tournament. But in this thing, you get to watch every step of the way, and it's one match at a time, and it's while the match is going on, it's quiet. So man, if a guy clubs another guy in the head, you get to hear that, and you can almost feel it. If there's a slam, you hear the breath leave the guy that gets slammed. You know, you get sweat on you sometimes because they're flinging it. You know, it's a different event. It's a different experience, and it's a lot of fun. So that's just my plug right there. If you get a chance, go see the Northwest Submission Challenge. It's a fantastic event. When you guys are building this thing out, and Cameron, you're playing matchmaker, you know, there's a song about that, I think. And you're putting athletes together. You mentioned to me in the past that doesn't always stick, right? You'll have somebody's picture put up on the website or printed on the form, and they pull out the day before. Talk about that, just those challenges you guys have with putting an event like this together. Business owners, I want to talk to you for a second. Do you have a retail space inside your location? If so, I want you to think about something. Your customers are buying electrolytes. You know that, right? The problem is they're not buying them from you. Well, Salty Electrolytes can help fix that with their wholesale program. They can bring these sales to you in-house so that your customers get the electrolytes they love from the company they love, you. All you have to do is head over to goearnyourSalt.com and scroll to the bottom of the page and click Apply for Wholesale. Do it now before you forget. I know your type, I'm one of you. Once again, that's goearnyourSalt.com. The link is at the bottom of the homepage. There will also be a link in the description on this video. And now, my friends, go earn your salt.
Yeah, it can be difficult. You know, we have a lot of people who want to participate, which is awesome. We have a lot of registries. We don't charge for it, and we keep everybody on file forever. And we really want to give people opportunities to compete. And you know, I have a lot of people, hey, get me on. Hey, man, you know, it's booked on this one, but if somebody steps out, we'll get you in, or we'll get you on the next one. So challenges are really, we've never had one card that started the same way as it finished. Not one card. There's been matches and athletes that pull out for various reasons, and sometimes it's finding someone to take that place. Sometimes we just lose the whole match and have to replace it with something else. A lot of it is like injuries, and it's more common the closer we get to the event. I do think in jiu-jitsu there is a case to say that the strategy for peaking as heading into competition,
You're talking about the training peak? Is that what you're
maybe
referring
gets
to?
lost a little bit. Yes, exactly. Where it seems that the last like 2 weeks of training, everybody's just like getting their hardest, craziest rounds, and it's like, man, maybe not the way to like hit your peak. Everybody's got their thing, so whatever. But yeah, I mean, every show we've had people pull out, and sometimes it's a blue belt 185 pounder where there are like 60 of, and sometimes it's like a female 145 purple belt, and it's like, man, there's not a lot of those, and even less that compete, and so it can be a little mismatched socks sometimes, where it's like, well, I got a purple belt that's 145, I got a brown belt that's like 160, that probably won't work, so what else? And it's kind of this constant sort of thing. And you know, I learned pretty quickly, don't get comfortable with the first card, because it's never going to happen. You need to have some backups in place, both athletes and matches and other things. And it can also be difficult because you don't want too many of one thing. Like, I don't want to replace every colored belt match with a blue belt match or a brown belt match. You want to kind of make sure all the belts get represented, make sure men and women get represented. We really try to get as much weight, belt color, men and women diversity as we can, and get as many gyms represented as we can, because that's the other thing, is we really, this is for the community, and we want as many gyms represented that we can. I get proud of a card when I look at it and I'm like, hey man, there's 20 gyms in this thing. That's pretty cool.
That's an awesome thing. I never really thought about that, because you know, you guys, you could make it the SBG show if you wanted. You got enough students down there, but you don't, right? You're right. There's been this last card, man. I don't know, maybe it was 20 gyms represented there, but there was a lot. Some of them I hadn't even heard of.
Yeah, there's quite a few. We had one from Montana. We had a couple from Utah. We had some from Washington originally booked. I mean, we really have brought people in from the Northwest, and you know, there's more obviously gyms than ever just in our own backyard, and so we really try to get everybody involved.
Jesse, from your perspective, in the role you play in the Northwest Submission, what are challenges you face?
I mean, making sure that I'm doing the things that Cameron asked me to do. Sometimes, like, hey, did we get that done? I'm like, oh, dang it. Because the gym is my full-time job, and fortunately, like, a lot of the things that you know, that Cam needs me to do, I can get done here. I can, and you know, there's definitely like some overlap, but yeah, making sure I'm just staying on top of it, making sure that I'm communicating to our people here. You know, I have a direct line of communication to our people that are competing. So if Cam needs them to do something, get it done. But you know, to Cam's point, or to your point, Riley, this could be the SBG show, and we definitely don't want that. I think the thing I was struck by too is how many gyms were involved in like reffing and judging, commentating. I don't think there was when we had a couple of people judging, but that was about it from our gym, and I think that's really cool. And I think David was running the social media, and that to me was probably the thing that I enjoyed the most is in seeing the pride that the community was taking in the event and their part in it. And it's always really cool and rewarding for me to hear when people come from out of state. Like, man, this is really cool. I've really, really enjoyed it. The gal that we got from Alaska, Becca, mentioned it several times how much she just enjoyed the event, how cool it was, and that to me is really rewarding to hear.
I'll tell you what, part of that, and this is shout out to announcer Mike, man, that guy freaking kills it. So
Yeah.
you give that guy a fist bump because that was a big step up. I think you guys probably realize that, but that was a big step up from announcers previous, right? That guy does such a good job.
Oh yeah.
Let's talk about this because you are with your gym, which is one of the largest, maybe the largest martial arts gym in Boise that I know of. And then you're running the Northwest Submission Challenge too. And what do you what's it like to juggle a couple businesses? How do you do that?
Well, I am fortunate that Cameron does the lion's share of the work. He does a lot, just like keeping it in the public eye leading up to it. And, as far as social media and running that, and, he and I have conversations about what we want to do for the next event, but, we're only running 2 a year. So there's a lot of work that's concentrated over a short period of time, and then we get some breaks in between. So it's not too bad. And, again, my life is kind of consumed by these things, and that's just one more thing that I can do. But like I said, I'm here at the gym most of the time, and I can do a lot of that stuff here pretty easily. I'm not on a conference call with investors or anything like that. It's just everything I do it revolves around martial arts, and I've got a nice little spot to do it here at the gym.
Well, you just said something there indirectly, but really what you're saying is Northwest is very adjacent to what you do on a daily basis. So it's not a big leap. It's not like you said you're on the phone talking to investors. You're in the martial arts world anyways. Your head's in it. And you're around those people all the time. And so it's a very adjacent product to what you're currently doing.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. Cameron, you work a full-time job outside of that. And so talk about your, those seasons when you're putting the show together. What does workload look like, and how do you balance all that?
Yeah, I have a grown-up job. So in the beginning, it was really challenging. It's still challenging, but it was much more challenging in the beginning, because in the beginning was really building the vision. And there's so much that you don't think about that goes into making something like this happen. And when you have two guys like me and Jesse get together, it's kind of like you create your wish list of like, here's the vision, magic wand. If we could have everything, here's how it would be. And then you break that down by, well, how do we make these things happen? And the search begins of like, you and I were talking earlier about like finding designers and photographers and everybody else who has some element that we need to make our vision happen, and balance all of those things. And creating that the first time, I think, is the most challenging. And then the second most challenging is then when we did it the first time, we went back and said, here's what we like and want to keep. Here's what we want to add. How do we get that? What do we need to do in order to make that happen by the next show? And then every show gets a little smoother and a little bit easier, because we've either already kind of built what we like, what we want. We have contacts that do X, Y, and Z. we have people that we trust do A, B, and C, and we already have the merch made, or the mat's already there, or whatever else. And so, um, not to say that there's not a lot of work to do for every one of them, but it's gotten a little easier to manage. What's helped me a lot is um, Jesse kind of touched on this a bit, but like surrounding yourself with people that you could trust and rely on and work with, and that's very helpful. And then also creating kind of a working list. Like, these are the things that we need to have happen. What's the responsibility for those? What's it going to take to do these things? Because when you're trying to get 40 things done, it's really easy to forget 5 of those 40 things. And so, for me, like writing things down and creating like actual working lists of here are the tasks that need to be done and here's by when they need to be done, um, is been helpful to me. And also doing it a few times, it's like, all right, well, I have, like Jesse said, we have time between shows. We don't need to do all of the work 2 weeks before the show. What can we get done in what time period, and then make sure it's done. And then by the show, Jesse and I talked, I think before this last show, it might have been the one before, where it's like, it's kind of fun. This one, I got to just sit and watch a lot of matches, and I wasn't just panicking and running around and doing things. This one I was a little bit, but the one before, not so much. And that to me is kind of the goal of, we've done a really good job, is like, hey, by the time we kind of push this boat into the water, we just can confidently be like, hey, we'll make sure things are not burning to the ground, but for the most part, uh, we're pretty dialed in. It does get really stressful, and I have to manage that on a personal level quite a bit. But yeah, I mean, we all have some tools. I have a really good counselor, obviously, that I work with. She's great, and she helps me organize my thoughts and deal with things. And she's been a real just impact in my life. And every time we get into Northwest season, she's great about being like, all right, where you at? What do you need? What do we need to do? How do we make sure that you just have the mental bandwidth to get through this? And that's personally been really helpful.
Man. Jesse, you had mentioned delegation. You didn't use the word, but you said you've got people that you trust for certain duties that you understand can handle those. You mentioned the girls that run your front desk are very capable of running the booth at the Northwest Submission, and you've got people in mind all the time, as Kameron mentioned, that have certain skill sets. When it comes to delegating, man, what tips do you have for people on doing that correctly? Because you guys do a good job.
Boy, I don't know if I'm the person for advice on this, only because that was a big change for me. Just running the gym is learning to delegate. I've had a lot of great business mentors that just help me understand. Some of the best advice I got is like, they're going to screw it up, but you got to let them. And you can't do everything. Not if you want this thing to grow, because if you're doing everything, then it's just one person can only do so much. So, understand that not everybody's going to do it the way I would, but oftentimes it's for the better. Like, let them screw it up, or even if I'm like, I don't know, if I would have done it that way, I don't think I like it, but then all of a sudden the results are better than any I've ever gotten. So, there's a lot to learn too. I think ultimately it's just, you got to just let it go a little bit. This gym is bigger than me, and I had to recognize that a long time ago. I play a part, but if I was to die tomorrow, this thing would continue on. I think, anytime we lose somebody that, or they move on, then necessarily die, go do other things, but if they stuck around, they have an impact, and their presence will be missed. But ultimately, we've built this thing that has brought so many people together. It's going to continue on, and you have to have more people to build something like that. So I think the Northwest, while on a smaller scale, is still you know, we have to have a similar mindset. And that's why it's been so cool for me to watch so many other people from different affiliations step into announcing roles, judging roles, social media roles. Uh, that, this is something that's becoming bigger than just our team. It's becoming, uh, a thing for all the teams to take pride in and enjoy.
Oh man, you got some stuff in there that's going into the clips. I'm telling you what. There's some good stuff in there. Hey, guys, this is called the Go Earn Your Salt podcast. I've got it right here on my shirt. You guys have seen it at the shows. When you hear that term, go earn your salt, what does it mean to each of you?
Okay.
Jesse, you can start.
Oh, boy. Well, I mean, there's I think the real physical interpretation of it. I don't get to go enjoy replenishing my body until there's a deficit, and I have to go take from my body. I have to go give my pound of flesh, so to speak, and now I've earned the right to replenish it. And but I think on a deeper level, like, it's not always going to be physical. You have to give of yourself emotionally. You have to be present. You have to, do the hard work that doesn't just manifest itself physically. So, and I think, I've been around this community, this world for going on 2 decades now, and I feel like I'm finally getting to the point where I feel like I've earned my place, and as somebody that has given back and helped make this community better. And it was difficult, and there was a lot of times where I didn't know if I was necessarily deserving of my place here. But I feel like I've become more comfortable with that as the years have gone by, and I earned my salt, so to speak.
Love it, man. Cameron?
I would definitely agree with what Jesse said. I would just, part of it for me is also just do the work. A lot of people want a lot of things. A lot of people have dreams, aspirations, and goals. Um, it takes a certain amount of work to accomplish those things, most of which is not comfortable or convenient. And I do not subscribe to this like David Goggins, you must kill yourself to have value thing. But I do think that most things operate on a progressive overload model where you just have to get a little outside your comfort zone and then figure out how to make that work and then challenge yourself a little bit more, make that work, and so on. I mean, that's how muscles grow, right? They break down a little bit, they grow back a little stronger. They break down a little bit, they grow a little stronger. And nobody goes into a gym and throws all the weight on a bar. You build it over time with that progressive overload and the strength to match it. So your work rate kind of needs to match your your progressive goals a piece at a time, but you can only do it by challenging yourself a little bit more than what's comfortable and a little bit more than what you've done so far. And I think if you can do that and you can challenge yourself to be a little uncomfortable by doing the work that needs to be done to achieve whatever your goals, aspirations, or dreams are, you're earning your salt. And that would be kind of my summary of it.
Well said, my friend. Man. Um, Jesse, your favorite pastime outside of martial arts?
Boy, I've gotten into gardening recently. Not recently, probably like the last. I bought my um, current home in, I think it was like late 2021, early 2022, something like that. And part of the reason I bought that property is it had a big backyard, and I wanted to learn how to garden. And um, some successes, some failures. The problem I have is I'm not home a lot, so trying to, which doesn't always like go hand in hand with the gardening hobby. But uh, yeah, I've been enjoying that. That property also has an apple and a pear tree, so like harvesting those, I'd press my own cider and I don't know, make my own pickles. And I mean, it's minor stuff. It's not super difficult, but I've been enjoying that. Um, I do a lot of Legos too.
Oh, cool.
If you come to my house, you'll be struck by like just like the Lego sets that I have built that are just kind of around as decoration. It started as a way to kind of do something with my kids. Now I think I enjoy it more than they do. They've moved on. They're not as interested in Legos, and so like I'm over there doing them, and they're reading or something,
You know, you can't see it in the
which is kind of
you
funny.
can't see it in the camera if I tip it up just a little bit up on the top shelf of my thing. See the DeLorean there?
Oh yeah,
That's the
no, I
Lego
got that one.
DeLorean. That's my kids. I just took that because I think it's
Yeah,
the coolest thing.
yeah.
Um,
The Legos are crazy now. I get like the email updates. They got a new set, and I'll go and check it out. And so expensive. I'll kind of like save up if there's a set I want and splurge on it. But yeah, I'm also running out of room. My house isn't the biggest, so trying to figure out where I'm gonna put it all because I don't want to rebuild them. I like looking at them, and the kids will play with them sometimes.
oh, that's awesome. Cameron, you laughed when he said gardening. Why?
Oh, just I mean, if you know Jesse, like that, slower, softer side, you might not be sure exists, but it does. It's in there. Jesse's at home gardening in his New Balances and jorts,
Yeah.
probably wearing a belt with a polo tucked in. It's just, if you know Jesse, it's a funny thing to picture.
Oh my gosh, man. Polo tucked in. I love the mental image there. Um, how about you? What's something quirky about you that people don't know?
Oh, quirky, man. Where to begin? Um, I mean, for a long time, my hobbies outside of martial arts were just other martial arts. Like if I wasn't training, I was going to competitions or watching training tutorials or reading histories on whatever. I tend to get very obsessive about things. Like I have the ADHD, not where you like do a lot of things, but you get very like overly into certain things. Um, that has faded a bit over the years, just kind of having to disconnect that addiction a bit, and I've diversified. And one thing that Jesse and I share is I also like Legos, and I use it as a therapy mechanism, and I also use it for fun. Like he and I will send pictures back and forth once in a while of like, "Hey, did you see this came out?" and "You
Right.
should grab this," and that type of stuff. And then we bitch about the price tag, and that is something that we share. Outside of that, I think the thing that I'm known for is I have cats. I'm kind of a crazy cat lady. They're great. It's not really a hobby, but it is a quirky thing that people know about me. And yeah, those are probably the
How
kind
many
of
do you have
to
again?
pair it off of what Jesse's talking. You're breaking up a bit, Jesse. What was the next question?
How many do you have again?
Too many. Too damn many.
But you,
What's crazy
I
is
have
last time
many.
I was at Cam's house is I was like, "Where are your cats?" He's like, they're here somewhere." And we started like looking around, and yeah, they're hidden. You wouldn't even know it walking in his house.
it's so funny. I tell you guys
Yep.
a quick funny story. My dad had a friend, older lady. She was the ultimate cat lady. She had crossed the line. He was over at her house one time and got into a freezer, and she had more than 20 cats in the freezer that had passed away that she was waiting till spring to bury because the ground was frozen. She couldn't do it. So I thought, man, that she's crossed the line. Some of
I'm not
those
that
she
bad.
didn't make it the previous summer, and so they just got to carry over to the next year. But that's when you know you've crossed the line. So no cats
Yes.
in the freezer, Cameron.
Right.
No, I'm not there yet. No.
Um, let's see here, Jesse. Were you ever kicked out of school?
No, I was a pretty good kid. I was definitely a people pleaser. Um, Want to get good grades, didn't want to cause any trouble. I think wrestling was good for me, learning to have a little backbone. And but no, I never got kicked out of school, fortunately.
Man, Cameron, what's something on your bucket list that you hope to do before you cash it in?
Um, I don't really have a bucket list. I did. I used to. Um, I used to live very much in the past and very much in the future. And I think through my injury and through some of the therapy that I've done, I don't really have a bucket list. And part of the reason why is because anything I've ever put on my bucket list has been like on a certain path, and then opportunities and cool things that I've done have taken me away from that path. It's not that I've given up on the goal, but it's just like, oh, I found this other kind of opportunity. Like for instance, being a black belt was on my bucket list for years. I don't know that that's ever going to be possible for me, but there kind of came this fork in the road where I got to do a lot of cool things that are supporting the combat sports stuff. And if I was solely focused on getting a black belt and doing nothing else, I wouldn't have experienced some of these things.
You said something there that being able to let go of things and not have it affect your identity, that's a big deal, man. And it sounds like you kind of grew into that with the injury and kind of realizing that maybe the black belt's never coming, but that there's so many other things you can do that are still beneficial to that martial arts world that you love. And, the black belt doesn't mean everything, right? So you said you thought that was a dumb answer. I didn't think so at all. I think that was great because there was a lot of stuff in there that was like, man, I hear you. I hear you for sure. Cameron, what's a book you would recommend everyone read?
Um, one book that I did like, it's called The Comfort Crisis. I don't do a lot of the sort of self-help motivational type books per se, but I did like that one. It kind of talks about everybody needs to challenge theirself
Yes.
to some regular degree. Um, at least yearly do something that really challenges your bounds, and in order to do that, you kind of have to prepare for it and train for it a little bit. But again, you don't need to just kill yourself all day every day and live in this just sort of self-defeating cycle, which by the way, like, muscle does not grow that way. And neither does healing or anything else. So do not recommend that. But getting a little uncomfortable, challenging yourself a bit, and doing some things that stretch you a bit, and being on regular sort of growth patterns, I think is great. And I think the book is really neat. My favorite book is Midnight in Chernobyl, which has nothing to do with self-help whatsoever. It's just my favorite book and talks about recounting the Chernobyl disaster. Totally has nothing to do with improving your life whatsoever.
No, man, some of that stuff's cool. Jesse, I want to turn that over to you. What's a book you would recommend everyone read?
Um, Boy, Coach Paul would be really upset with me, but I don't read, not nearly as often as I used to. Um, I was a substitute teacher for a while, and I read a ton then. I really enjoyed it. That was probably the best part of the job. Once the kids were working, I just picked my book up. But one I have read recently was Never Split the Difference.
Mhm.
Um, I really enjoyed that one. I tend to read to escape. So the fact that it was written from the point of view of like a hostage negotiator, and they set the stage with like these scenes where there was hostages, it put me kind of in um, the setting of books I enjoy reading. So, like I said, I read to escape. I'm not a big self help book reader either. Um, But I did really enjoy that. I've got like learning how to talk to people, learning how to negotiate. I did enjoy that. Some of the psychology behind it, but it was really informative. And I think in the reading was cool because he often drew upon these very stressful, dire situations. So you're not just it's not reading like a lecture. There's these exciting scenarios that are happening, and then he's kind of giving examples of the things he was talking about through them. Um, and then my favorite book is Cold Mountain by Charles Fraser. Awesome book. Yeah.
What's that one
If
about?
you get a chance to pick that one up, it's it was a movie too. I really enjoyed the book. Um, it's been a while since I've read it, but it's set in like Civil War times, and uh, it's a husband and wife. Husband ends up leaving to go fight war, and it's all about the trials and tribulations that his wife went through, and then they ended up finding each other, and it's a love story. But it's one that's set in a really cool time, and it's a pretty heartbreaking ending. But I don't want to ruin it for anybody that might want to pick it up.
Oh, that sounds awesome, man. I love the book recommendations because I take a lot of these and go find them. But the two you mentioned, Never Split the Difference, and the Comfort. What was it called? The Comfort Crisis.
Yep.
Yeah. Those two, I kind of think Never Split the Difference. I know is on this shelf somewhere, and then the Comfort Crisis. Yeah, those are both books I've read, and both definitely recommended reads for sure. So, but all right, you guys, listen. Tell us where you can be found. Where both Northwest Submission, plug SBG here. Let's do that. Social media, that kind of thing. Jesse first.
Yeah. If you call or email the gym, you can probably get a hold of me. If you walk in here, there's a good chance I'm around. I'm here less these days because I've learned to delegate, and I can spend some time at home or doing stuff with my kids. But yeah, if you contact the gym, there's a good chance you'll be able to get a hold of me.
Nice. Kameron, Northwest Submission Challenge, where can you guys be found?
Yeah, best place is Instagram. It's just at NW Sub Challenge. We have a YouTube with a lot of cool stuff on it too, or backstage interviews, prior events. Definitely worth checking out for sure. And then everything else is just on the Instagram.
All right, you guys, let's wrap this thing up. I just want to tell you how much I thank you for being on here. It's been cool to work with you in this sponsorship role and get to know you guys. And once again, just want to plug that event. If you get a chance to speak into the audience now, to get out there and go see the Northwest Submission Challenge, it's a treat, especially if you're in the martial arts world. It's great. Gentlemen, it was an honor. Loved having you on. Would love to do it again at some point, maybe a year or two down the road, where you've got some more events under your belt and some more experience, and kind of talk. Like I said, I've got a lot more questions I'd love to ask you, but in the meantime, fellas, go earn your salt. Hey, you've just finished up this episode, and I want to know, are you or someone you know a getting after it, go earn your salt type of person? If so, message me directly on Instagram at the Go Earn Your Salt podcast, and perhaps we can have you on the show. Also, if you like this content, leave us a review, subscribe, and share with your friends. And perhaps this podcast can help you and them go earn your salt.